cider.
All right, now we're into part 2 of our little adventure on this one here, and we got the girls in on this one. See if they can remember anything. All you got to do is talk. The mic will pick you up, and you'll be on the thing.
Okay.
But yeah, we were kind of brainstorming a little, thinking.
Parachute pants.
The music that we grew
Some
up
of the
with.
fashion.
I had a parachute pants.
I had a whole wardrobe of parachute
I
pants.
just had one.
Breakdancing was in style.
Oh my
back
God,
in the
I
80s.
did breakdancing too. Skateboarding.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Skateboarding,
I was
that's
good
when
at
skateboarding came in at.
We got
You know how many freaking boards I broke?
we had our first wooden half pipe built in the neighborhood we lived in right around that time. But breakdancing, oh my God, my brother was good at that.
Too.
He was good at that one. I used to dress the part, but he used to
And everybody
actually
wanted
be the
to
part.
imitate
There was
Michael
a kid in
Jackson.
my class that used to do it all the time in the hallways.
Yeah, Michael Jackson was actually something then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, the
Big
music,
hair
the
bands,
music we grew up
women,
on with the big hair bands.
And then the women with the big hair,
Yeah.
bell bottoms. Those were the 70s.
Jesus, yeah. Well, those started
Yeah,
in the
that was
70s.
one
Those
of
bled into the 80s.
80s for a while.
I think I had a pair of those.
Yeah, our bands that we grew up with, the heavy metal ones, you know, the one that, like I said earlier,
Iron Maiden,
the one that was the craziest big hair band out there, and just people would make fun of was Twisted
It's his sister.
Yeah.
You know,
Dee Snider.
Dee Snider.
Yeah.
But they produced some really kick-ass music.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
You know, and you got Rat.
Yeah.
Rat did Round and Round. That was one of their most famous. You had the Scorpions.
Yeah.
White Snake.
White Snake. You had
Leonard Skinner.
Motley Crue. Leonard Skinner was from the 70s.
Well, yeah.
But they were still big in the 80s.
Well, they're still big today. What's left of them?
But this is, I'm saying more like the heavy metal, the stuff that a lot of us actually went.
Nazareth. Nazareth was big. Love Hurts was a big one for proms.
Yeah. You know, and you had, and then also you had other groups that did start back in the 60s and 70s, and they were still going strong in the 80s, and they produced awesome music then too.
AC/DC.
AC/DC. You have
Aerosmith.
Grateful Dead. They were from the 60s and 70s.
Pearl Jam?
Pearl Jam, they started more in the 90s, I think, late 80s, early 90s.
Guns N' Roses started around late 80s, early 90s.
But they went and they produced some
Poison.
really good stuff. Yeah, Poison. And then Fleetwood Mac.
Oh my God.
One of the greats.
Oh, yeah.
Fleetwood Mac's gone around for decades. Or how about the Eagles?
Well, the Eagles, yes, but let's go back to Fleetwood Mac for a second.
Fleetwood Mac.
Fleetwood Mac
Oh my God.
has produced so much music and so many albums over the years that it'd be impossible unless you have a photographic memory to literally stand, sit, whatever, and name off everything.
My favorite was Going Your Own Way. That was my favorite song by them. And then you had Stevie Nicks going solo.
Stevie Nicks went solo.
You know.
And she did really well.
You know, Foghat was around back then. Aerosmith was around back then.
Well, yeah. And then you also had Tom Petty around that time too.
Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
And we just recently,
the Knack.
We just recently lost that great.
Yeah.
He was, in October he won.
He was a rock. He was a rock legend.
He is definitely a rock legend. He produced some of the best.
Bowie was big back then.
At State Fair.
David Bowie was big back then.
Yep.
In the 80s and the 90s.
God. That's another legend we lost too. David Bowie.
Yep.
Oh, and it wasn't just Debbie Harry or who was the other one you were talking about?
Blondie is another one from the 80s.
No, that the girls were making, saying that they were doing their hair up and dressing like and stuff. Debbie Harry.
Pat Benatar.
Believe it or not, a lot of the girls
that was
liked
from
the
Fast.
hair.
That was the scene from Fast Times at Ridgemont High where she was trying to teach the girl how to give a blowjob.
Yes.
Remember that scene?
Yes.
in the
Yes,
cafeteria.
and that's
And they
one
were
of
talking
great
about all the
movies, too.
girls walking around
You got
dressed
that
like
movie.
Pat Benatar.
You got Last American Virgin.
Last
That
American
was a
Virgin,
good-
that's actually up there somewhere.
Um,
Fast Times at Ridgemont
Breakfast
High.
Club.
Breakfast Club.
is
The Brat Pack.
Oh God.
St. Elmo's Fire.
Yes.
16 Candles.
16 Candles.
Pretty in Pink.
Pretty in Pink.
Yep. See.
I remember that.
Those are great movies. Those
Yeah.
are movies of our time. Those are movies that
And now Hollywood's producing
Started a new
shit.
genre. You know?
Or
Yes.
redoing things.
Well, that's the biggest problem. They're
I mean,
rehashing. all
Dirty
this crap.
Dancing
Fucking
came out back
everything
then.
else.
Rehashing because they can't
Yes.
think of anything
Dirty
else.
Dancing came out back then, and Grease. Grease is always going to be a classic. I mean, that movie's still going
Original
strong.
Grace.
You know, the original, yeah.
Yeah, the original Grease.
With, yeah, John Travolta and
There was
Olivia
Two
Newton-John.
Greases, but the
That
first
was the
one
hottest
best.
outfit ever.
Well,
But
we got off on that, but the thing is, though, it wasn't just Pat Benatar and Debbie Harry and all that they were trying to make
Joan
their
Jett,
themselves look like. A lot of the girls loved the hairstyles
that the guys were wearing.
Yeah.
I knew you were thinking that.
Yeah.
No, the David Bowie, the hairstyles that David Bowie brought in.
Yeah, but you remember Bon
A lot of the
Jovi
girls
and some
were-
of their big hair
Oh,
and long
Jesus.
hair? I mean, you weren't sure if that was a guy or a chick on stage
Oh, I
sometimes
know.
because they used to
I
wear
know.
makeup back then too.
Who's the one that does that song about being a rock star and walking into the bar? You know, he's on his bike riding along.
I don't remember that one. I probably would if I heard it.
On the stage again.
Oh, that's Bob Seger.
Bob Seger.
Bob Seger.
Yeah, he
love
was
Bob
another.
Seger.
He was another
Yeah.
great.
Bob
kid.
Seger on. I know what you're talking about
But
now.
here's one that all of you will agree with me on this. You could never understand half of the shit he was saying.
Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan.
I can't handle
USA
that guy.
for Africa came out then,
Yeah.
We
where
Are
you
the
had
World.
like
We Are the World.
We Are the World. You had the greatest, huge
Oh
Big.
God, yes.
collaboration of some of the
Some of the
all-time greats of
all-time
music.
greats were up there.
I mean, Cyndi Lauper was there.
Oh, and Cyndi Lauper was another good one too.
And
she's
her
pretty sold out.
hairstyles. Speaking of hairstyles,
Oh,
my
and
God.
one of the thank you for saying that, because one of the absolute best movies I feel that came out during that era, Goonies.
Goonies.
Goonies was awesome, dude. That movie went and
Can you do the
followed
truffle
through.
shuffle?
that movie literally took what every kid our age wanted to do
Go
and
treasure
turned
hunting.
it into a fucking adventure, man.
Go treasure hunting for pirates' treasure.
Yes, yes, and it was freaking awesome. You can't sit there and tell me that it was not an awesome movie.
It was a good movie.
And it got,
Speak up, woman.
it got Cyndi Lauper a number
I've
one
never
hit.
seen it.
It got Cyndi Lauper a number one hit
Oh,
and a
yes, it
music
did.
video on MTV.
And then in our era, wrestling.
Oh God.
That's when wrestling
WWF.
started becoming huge.
Hulk
And it was
Hogan, the Crusher.
wrestling. It was WWF.
Oh, I was raised on wrestling. I could go on forever on wrestling.
Yep.
You know.
These are things. These are the things
I watched
in our
wrestling with my
era,
brother.
in our time frame that we grew up in.
In the 80s, my dad took me to so
we
much
loved.
wrestling events, it wasn't funny. And we went to some of them, too. We actually got on TV a couple of times
Yes,
because of the
yes,
signs
we
we were
did.
holding up.
But that was back in
That was
wasn't
back
in the
before all
80s.
that.
That was after.
That
I
was
moved
back
out
before
here.
all the lights, the glamours, and the big
Before
fancy
wrestling
entrances.
became acting.
Yeah.
That was back
before
when wrestling
became
It wasn't
acting.
so
before
big.
it became acting, and that was also back when
Wrestling was more
Geraldo
fun to
Rivera
watch.
did that interview with one of those wrestlers. And,
Oh, speaking
and
of
he's like-
Geraldo Rivera, he
and
was
he's like,
big back
he
then.
he actually accused that wrestler of wrestling being fake and all this other And that wrestler reached up and slapped him right in the fucking ear.
If I'm not mistaken, I got it.
No, he did. He slapped
know,
him in
but
the ear,
I
and
was
he
trying to
slapped him
remember.
so hard, and it was on camera, it actually ruptured his eardrum.
And I'm trying to remember who that wrestler was.
I can't
I'll figure it out one of these days, but I remember that.
Nose broken.
I know it wasn't I know it wasn't Jesse the Body, because he wouldn't have done that.
But remember, at the same, that was, we had another guy come out of the '80s, you know, that was famous in the '80s for wrestling, and then now he turns around. He's the most famous governor of Minnesota there ever was.
He became a governor, and
Jesse the Body Ventura.
Yep.
Man, that's one guy I'd love to meet someday.
Our reminiscing of all this is taking us into another side.
Yeah, I didn't like him much as a wrestler, but after watching his shows and stuff like that and reading more about him, man. And then he was in one of the greatest movies out of the '80s too. Wasn't he in Alien? One of the Predator movies.
The very first Predator movie. He was in that. Yes, he was in that with.
You had some wrestlers that acted back then that are actually pretty good.
They were actually very good.
Hot Rod Roddy Piper.
I like him.
I
remember him.
God rest his soul.
He always wore his kilt.
He was awesome.
He did a movie called They Live.
They Live, yep.
It was a B-title movie, and the reason I know it is I worked in the video stores back then.
That was a B-title movie.
Video stores were all over the place, and I actually managed
that movie actually turned out to be a very good movie. It
was.
Really good movie. And the storyline was awesome on it.
Where, on the other hand, Hulk Hogan in his early movie, what was that early movie? I'm trying to think. I can't even remember the title. It was that bad that it sucked.
And he was supposed to be an alien, too.
Suburban Commando.
Yeah, Suburban Commando.
And it had, if I'm not mistaken, it had, I want to get his name right, and I can't think of his name. The Undertaker.
Oh, I can't remember his name. I just know he was the
Mark.
Undertaker.
Mark Calloway.
Yes.
Mark Calloway was in that movie. You wouldn't recognize him, but he was in that movie. Very young at that time. And also, Scott Hall, it was Kevin Nash. It was Scott Hall, a.k.a. Razor Ramon, was also in that movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Kevin Nash came later.
And then he did this one called, what was it called, where he was a wrestler, and he took on this black guy. Oh, what was it? I see. Hulk Hogan sucks as an actor, plain and simple.
Yeah, he does.
Another movie,
The Rock. The Rock, on the other hand, The Rock should stay an actor.
Yeah, he's really good.
He is awesome.
He's really good.
I mean, what he did in Fast and the Furious movies and stuff like that, I mean, that guy was awesome.
You know where he got his start in acting, right? His very first one, they used his rendition, him as a rendition of the Scorpion King in the second.
Well, yeah, I know he was in those something about the mummy movies.
He was. After that,
but doing that walking, and then doing that Walking Tall movie with Johnny Knoxville,
that all started it off for him.
That was the one that impressed me the most about The Rock, because he had a comedic side about him. I mean, I saw that in wrestling a little bit, but
the rundown.
He looked like he was having fun in Walking Tall.
That one was funny. That one was a good one. And the man does have a good sense of humor, because think about this.
I got a lot of respect for The Rock as an actor.
Humor, and he wasn't.
I'm glad he got out of wrestling. I mean, I liked him as a wrestler, but
why would he do a movie called Tooth Fairy?
Yeah, but he was able to do that.
Right. Think about this.
And then you had Hulk Hogan doing, what was it, The Nanny or something like that? What was it called? And that kind of movie kind of flopped too. But The Nanny,
I thought of that too.
I mean, that was like a big hit for The Rock too as well. I mean, you know.
The Nanny.
Nanny.
Yeah, it was
he wasn't in The Nanny.
No, there was one that you had Hulk Hogan in a tutu or something like that.
Yeah, that one is the one you're talking about. You said The Rock.
No, it was Hulk Hogan, and I mean that
no,
movie flopped.
when you said it, you said The Rock, but I think we understand now.
Yeah. But The Rock doing that one.
You know, we are going to have to do a part 3.
Okay. I guess
we're running out of time. Hey, I know we got a couple of seconds here we can throw to you at it, but you know that's the thing. That is our era, is the 80s. That's when most of us grew up. We grew up during the 80s and the 90s, and now we're old farts and grandmas and grandpas, and And our kids are off growing up now and having kids of their own.
And
so.
getting into trouble.
Yeah.
Left and right, most of them.
And, so, yeah, we're going to have a part 3.